Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me again for episode number 8 of Putting the Horse First. As my guest today, Naomi Kahlich. Naomi and I are talking about her background in positive reinforcement training for dogs, her experiences using positive reinforcement training on her Mustang. So Naomi and I had a rather long conversation. Here I'm going to drop us in right when we started talking about her background in dog training. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy it.
So I was actually a professional dog trainer. I was certified in positive reinforcement for dogs, technically. And when I started training Juno myself, everyone was always like, "Do you train dogs? Because you're walking around with the fanny pack and all this and that." And I'm like, so that is how I went about her training. And in some places, I really struggled because obviously the biggest difference with a horse and a dog is dogs are at their core a predatory animal. Horses are a prey animal. So with all my dogs, I would see, okay, you're scared of whatever. We have steps A, B, and C to get you over it. And then with a horse, it was like, you're scared of your own shadow. We have steps A, A.1, A.2, A.3, up to A.9. Then maybe we can go to B, unless I need to go back to A.2 just to get you back to. And that was the thing that I struggled to figure out is I would get her doing this thing and I'd show another horse person, oh, look, I accomplished this. And they'd be like, but does she do this thing? And I'm like, why? And they're like, she needs to know first. Why?
Gotcha. Well, it is, as I've been listening to and following the positive reinforcement, how they describe it has changed. It was described originally as being very forgiving. And now they realize that it's a little bit more complicated than they had thought. And the dog training people, when I first heard them talking about positive reinforcement, it was a lot more, you've got to teach your dog to go off leash and you're obligated to give your dog more exercise. And now after COVID, especially, I hear podcasts about dog training. So first thing, go to the vet, get your dog some behavior meds. That's first.
Breeding quality went so downhill during COVID. And I saw it in my training program, left, right, and center first of all, you had all the doodles of every different color, size, variation. They're all coming in the door. And I have a golden doodle. I didn't get him when it was like a designer breed thing though. So he's bred back a generation. So if you look at him, you're kind of like, that's a weird looking golden retriever. And that's how I like it. He was bred really well. Like his dad had AKC papers, was performing well. His mom was nice as most doodles kind of get these days. And now a ton of your doodles just come out of puppy mills or, this dog has a pretty fur color. Yeah, he likes to bite kids in his spare time. It's fine. And they breed him out. And so I would get in all these doodles and every trainer at my facility was like, ew, I don't want to work with doodles. I want to work with dogs that have a brain. So I became the doodle girl. Any client came in, oh, I have a golden doodle. They're like, that one, Naomi. Yeah, talk to her. Don't even look at me. I don't want to talk about it. And it got to the point that that was my whole clientele. It was working with these antisocial reactive dogs and people are like, I thought doodles were always supposed to be so friendly and so sweet. And I'm like, yeah, me too. This is a little insane. It was so funny because in Golden Doodle group there's this really big technique that I use in dog training all the time that I started using in horse training that I think is so useful, and it's a countdown technique. And you hear about it more and more in different training programs, the idea of 3, 2, 1, reward, release, done, give them a minute to think about it and stuff like that. And in dogs, it was kind of my way of bringing them back to me when everything else was failing. They're just barking their head off, freaking out, staring, and 3, 2, 1. Now this dog is sitting in front of me, staring at me, and they don't care about anything anymore. And in Golden Doodle groups I would be in, I'd see these posts. My dog used to love other dogs. Now she hates them. How do I fix it? I was like, one, you can't. We've all met that really old lady on the corner that swears back in her day that she was the life of the party. And now she throws newspapers at little kids on her lawn. We've met them. And your dog is no exception to becoming her. And I was like, if she doesn't like other dogs, she doesn't like other dogs. And all you're going to do by forcing her to be around other dogs is push her further and further to being a bite risk. If you know she has 20 seconds before she wants to eat someone's baby, you have 20 seconds to get out of that situation. So I've told her, I was like, that's a better start than most people. Some people, their dog flips on a dime and they can't be around anyone because they don't know when to expect it. So I was like, she likes to be around people for 20 seconds and someone will not take no for an answer on can our dogs meet each other? You have 20 seconds to walk over. Hey, my name is whatever. Awesome. My dog's doing good. Let me pet her and tell her she's good. Oh, would you look at the time? We got to go. And You get
Yeah.
out of there before the situation can escalate. And I told him, use the countdown method, do this. And so many people were like, you know, that sounds great in theory, but I don't see how that works. So I sent them a video of this golden doodle that I've been working with, working in the same room as my doodle. And I had another trainer just walking my doodle off leash up and down this aisle while I'm holding this leash. And every time she saw my dog go by, she's barking her head off. She's lunging, and like my arms just go rigid. And people are like, "Are you yanking on her?" And I'm like, "No, she's yanking herself. I just don't let her get to another dog." So if your
Yeah.
dog's freaking out and you let them up to another dog, you don't know what's going to happen. And now if the
Yeah.
other dog gets attacked, it's your fault. So she would freak out. And the first time I would start saying 3, she couldn't even hear me over her own barking. But as soon as she heard the number, like a light switch, done, turned around, stared at me, was quiet, and just maintained herself. People are like, "Oh my God, how do you do that?" And I'm like, effort, people. It's really so easy to teach. Your dog just stares at you. You say 3, 2, 1, throw them a treat. Stares at
Yeah.
you, 3, 2, 1, throw them a treat.
Yeah.
And I use it with horses, and people thought I was crazy because I would tell them, like, I know that my horse's biggest fear up until this point was she doesn't want anything on her body. She doesn't want fly boots. She doesn't want a blanket. She doesn't want
Oh,
even
okay.
like a leg quilt. I couldn't even put a leg quilt on her back. Like that was
Yeah.
too much.
Mm.
And I would tell people she's terrified of having things on her back, but I've gotten her to a point she can manage it for 3 seconds. And
Mm.
they're like, "What do you mean 3 seconds?" I'm like, "I have 3, 2, 1 to get it off before she's going to explode." And
Yeah.
she will be totally fine for that 3, 2, 1. Like I would take videos so that I could reference it and
Mm.
show people like she is calm, she's doing the things, and she's like staring at anything else, but not in an anxious way.
Mm.
And if I stop counting and I just hold whatever's on her for an additional second, you see all the tension come right back. And
Oof.
she's like ready to
Wow.
go. So I
Oh
was
boy.
like, she needs the reassurance of knowing you only have 3 more seconds. You only have 2 more seconds. And stuff like that was a huge like game changer for her.
Yeah. Oh boy. Wow. Well, that's cool. I mean, yeah, I can see how the dog training background would definitely be enlightening when you're working with the horses. Is she near you now? You said she's at a trainer. So is that close to you or far away?
No, she's about an hour 15 from my house right now. But honestly, I live in the suburbs, so like she's never all that close to me.
Okay.
I've boarded her places that have been like an hour away, so she's really not terribly far, but with my schedule, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't have the time. And I also try and keep in mind that, you know, I paid more money than I realistically have at 20 years old for a trainer to work with her. And I was like, I need to give them space because I know I'm a helicopter mom. And I
Yeah.
catch myself doing it every time because the trainer will text me, "Oh, she and I did this today." And in my head, I'm like, "Yeah, I did that with her last year. That's not very impressive." And then I remember, like, my horse hates strangers. The fact that they get along at all is great. I need to just take a back seat and chill out.
Yeah.
So I give them as much space as I possibly can because I know if I didn't, I would drive that lady insane.
Yeah, no, that it's really hard sending it. I mean, yeah, I have never, only when I was working for a breeding farm and we had a horse that kept bucking us off, did I ever have a horse that I had been riding that we sent off to someone else. And yes, it just completely, the idea of having to send my guy off to someplace else, yes, that would be very, very hard. So does that
Mm.
person an R plus specialist, or does she just a 4 quadrants and incorporates R plus, or?
She uses the Lions method. That's
Oh,
what I believe she said she uses, which I
okay.
like before I ever sent my horse over, I looked into it and I was like, I feel like as far as natural horsemanship goes, that is definitely one of the more like
Yeah.
based in reason methods because there's so many methods that I look at and I'm like, and why would you do that? And so I was like, you know, she heard my horse's pass. She was as appalled as any person should be. And, you know, she understands why she's trained the way she is. And I told her, I was like, I have every video of anything I've ever trained her to do in her entire life with me. Like,
Hmm.
if you are wondering where something started, the likelihood is I have a video of where it started and you
Ah,
can see like the cogs turn. And so she told me, she was like, yeah, when she gets in, you know, we'll slowly transition her from R plus, the Lions method. And
hmm.
I was like, that's as much as I can ask for. And in the back of my head, and I'm like, I will switch her right back the moment she comes home. And so I sent her off, and I think it was the first or second day, she was like, we're doing this with no treats. And I was like, That feels very fast for a transition, but if you can even touch her without me being present, I need to just take a
Yeah.
step back and let you do your thing because it's clearly working right now. And there's so hard because I've seen how escalated Juno can get and how scared she can get so fast. And so anytime any amount of anxiety comes up in her brain when I watch them work together, I'm like, oh God, it's happening again. And then like things get fine and they work themselves out. So I've been trying to just let them do their thing because she's gotten her to a point that she'll walk around with a saddle blanket on.
Oh,
And
nice.
that was something I haven't been able to do in over a year now. So
Yeah.
it's like, she's found whatever's working right now. And I think a lot of what the difference was, and a reason why I knew I needed to find a new set of hands, was because I had seen her trauma. I had seen her scared. I never wanted to see her that way. So anytime she showed a little bit of anxiety, I was like, oh no, am I doing it wrong again? Am I going to mess her up? And like, I would get anxious. So then she's more anxious.
Really good. And that's actually a really good example of putting the horse first, is that you sent her off to somebody because you needed to progress with her. And it's also helpful just to get that horse hooked up with a different nervous system. I had a mare that I got from a friend, Holsteiner thoroughbred cross. And when she was younger, she kind of bucked us off a lot. She was pretty good at it. And the thing is, even though I had her whole life, she got to be a really reliable horse. But my nervous system never forgot the fact that, when she was 4 and 5, she popped me off quite handily and sent me flying. Having her around was a really good reminder to me that the horse's nervous system, and it's tough when you have those circumstances with that horse. Like my horse, current guy, he's 7 now. I got him when he was 4, and he's now starting to go quite well. But I have a lot more rides of, I'm not sure if this is going to go well. And my body remembers that and trying to make sure that I don't then carry that forward. He's letting it go now. I need to put it down too. And that can be hard with the horse. So what you're doing can be a very good thing. Give your nervous system a time to look at her doing something differently and saying, now maybe we can move forward from this new place. But it also helps to give us some maybe understanding of what the horse is like. The horse's nervous system is probably doing something similar. Like they remember all these days when things were scary. And it's hard for them to just not keep reacting like it might happen, like it did. And that's a hard thing to communicate to folks. I mean, some animals really do move on well, but some animals, like they had one bad day, like they had that one bad time that something happened bad with the farrier, or they didn't realize the vet was going to give them a shot, and they're slightly mistrustful of the vet forever on. Sometimes it's just a bad experience, and then you really have yourself an issue for a long time.
Yeah. And I told people all the time when I started training mustangs, I was like, people would be like, what are the pros and cons of getting a mustang? And I'm like, pro is they're just as good as any other horse.
Yep.
They're going to be the cheapest horse to own long term 9 times out of 10 because they really don't need you to take care of them for the most part. Obviously you should, but and stuff like that. And so I was like, pros are that, and that they're so versatile and they learn so well. The cons are, these are, in my opinion, the easiest horses to traumatize because they're just like, they're waiting for it. They're ready. They're like, any little thing, now I'm freaked out for days. And so one of my biggest training philosophies I told people, and so many people will ignore because they're like, that makes no sense, is I always tell people, if something went wrong during your training session, just literally don't train your horse the following day. Give them a day or 2 off to just forget about what you did. And people are like, why would I want them to forget what happened? I need them to move forward. When Juno had her first saddling and it went so incredibly terribly, I didn't put a saddle on her for, at this point, up to a year. I just let her forget about it because I was like, that was so terrible. Because before that, I could throw a surcingle on her, done. I could throw a bareback pad on her, done. Like anything was fine. And then she had the saddle on, it slipped under her stomach, her back leg got caught in the stirrup, and she ripped the fender clean off the Western saddle. So like, I'd never seen a horse tear a Western saddle before, but she did it. And after that, I was like, all right, we're just not going to put anything on you like anytime soon. You need to like forget that ever happened. And she took a really long time to forget it happened. And then at a certain point, she was over it, but I wasn't over it yet because I had seen how quickly she would get worried and messed up. And even then, she would never kick out. She would never do anything dangerous. She just kind of like trotted off and was like, I can't do that right now. But in my head, I was like, well, if I just forced her to be there like other people do, maybe she would blow up. And so it made me so anxious to do things.
Yeah.
And that was one of the reasons why I was like, I definitely know that I need to get another set of hands on it, because like I personally, I don't blanket horses that don't need it, but I think it's important for her well-being that she can have a blanket thrown on her. I used to be a wildlife biology major. And so anyone that owns a Mustang in America, whether you like it or not, you are now part of the conversation. Should we round up or should we not round up? So in my opinion, I think the obvious solution is dart mares with birth control. And obviously that's not an immediate fix. So while we're waiting for the birth control to take down population numbers, keep rounding up horses, but in a humane and like safe way. Because obviously if this current roundup is proving anything, it's that it's not safe. It's not for the benefit of the horses. Nothing about it is great. But people are like, oh my God, if you don't round up the horses, you know, so many of them, like they starve, they get dehydrated, this and this happens. And I'm like, and you're going to think I'm mean and terrible for it. But guess what? Like nature handles that. The horses die so that the population can be stronger and healthier, and that takes out your overpopulation crisis. People having a hand in it at all is why the horses are overpopulated in the first place. Realistically, the rangelands cannot hold that many animals, and people know that. So they're like, you know, obviously it's our job to get rid of the excess animals. It's like, if you stop and think about it, if it can't support that many animals, how did we get to this many excess animals in the first place? How did we get to thousands of additional horses that can't be fed if it weren't for the fact people are playing a role? Because if you take horses out, the population's just going to replace them having the chance to understand, oh, nature is not allowing for more of us. And so people hate to see it, but I'm like, if you just had more wolves, for example, you just reintroduced the natural predators. Sure, a wolf cannot take out a grown stallion. I'm not saying he should or he could, but like the babies, I hate to say it, the sick mares, the sick gelding, or not gelding, the stallions. I'm like, all those things would get taken care of without all the human intervention.
An accurate picture of what life of a wild horse is like. And they're free and they switch groups. And sometimes there's a hero stallion who chases off the bear. But there's a lot of times when a horse dies because they get impaled on a stick. And when it's abandoned because their mother fell through a pond. All kinds of stuff happens. So the wild horses are pretty, but they're out there. They're also, the bears have to eat, and so do the wolves and all the other critters. And they eat a lot of baby horses. And this is, you want them out there, but then nature takes over. When I was at university, there was one BLM adoption event. And then I've seen the Wild Horses, Wild Ride documentary. They have a couple of these Mustang restarting competitions where a trainer gets it for 3 months, they start it, and then they auction it off at the end. But I haven't known anyone personally who's been through any of those. Have you known anybody who's gotten a horse from one of those restart programs or anything?
I haven't known many that have gotten them through like EMMs or like tip competitions, but I've known the people that compete in them. And what I can say that I feel very strongly about is I don't think that 9, maybe 8 times out of 10, I don't think the horse you're getting from those competitions is really what they're advertised as being perfect and so great and so bomb-proof and so sound. There's absolutely people that manage to do that. Camille's Mustangs has like produced amazing horses. I think Sam Van Fleet even produces great horses, but there's so many horses I see that feel so rushed. And the one trainer that I talked to that did a ton of the competitions, she goes, I don't think you're ready to do one. Because I asked her, you know, should I try one out? Because I used to really love competing, you know, maybe it would be fun. And she goes, I don't think you're cut out for it, because if you're not on that horse giving it its first ride by the 4th day of training, you're already behind the game and you're going to lose. I think that's such an insane and unrealistic expectation for those horses. And most R+ trainers I've found think that the competitions suck because they're forcing you essentially to rush your horses, because you don't win at the end of the day by having a horse that you're expected to bring all this wow factor. And if you don't, it's okay, you produced a horse, but people want to see the Mustang magic horse that rears and sits down and does this and does that. And that's a lot to ask of a horse in 60 to 90 days, especially one that a few days prior had never seen a human before. And looking at horses like Juno and how I trained her, if I had gotten her for a 90-day competition, I would have been a mental wreck because there's just no way it's happening. It took me 8 months to halter her originally. And the only way I was able to do it was I'd given up on the whole approach and retreat, touching them with the halter. She wasn't having none of that. I would put the noseband of a halter in her grain bucket every night. She'd have to put her nose in to eat her dinner, and I would touch her ears all over and all those things. And then I would start to move the crown piece of the halter. And when she kind of desensitized herself to all those things, I've like made the halter a decent length and I just slipped it over her ears. And she stepped back and was like, "Oh my God, what did you do to me?" And then she was like, "I don't really care though. I'm like really hungry," and came over and kept eating her dinner. And that was that. And once I finally like had that aha moment and got her going, like she was halter broke within the week. And she was doing all the new things, and she took her first saddle by the end of July, which that whole thing started in July. So she, like, by all means, if she had been given the right hand, I think she could have been someone's 90-day horse, but I think she would have been a menace the entire 90 days because she doesn't want to be rushed. I mean, even if our farrier shows up now and he's in a rush, she's like, "Oh no, you don't handle me like that. You're going to calm down. You're going to sit down, have a cup of chamomile tea, and then we're going to talk. Touching my feet in your current headspace, sir. You need to do some meditation real quick."
That was pretty much my notion when I saw how skilled the winners of those competitions are. I'm like, well, even if they sell the horse, the person who gets it is not as good as that person who trained it. The horse is going to keep on in very different hands. I was like, I wonder how that.
Well, and I've heard from those trainers too. They're like, a lot of my EMM horses come back to me at some point or another for more training because the owner can't keep up with it, or this and this happens. And so many of them will say even horses that they trained in their program come back to them at some point for more work because their owner put them out to pasture for a couple days too long. And now the horse thinks that they're like a wild stallion again. And, you know, the competitions clearly don't push people to want to do like amazing horsemanship. It pushes them to be on a timeline.
In terms of figuring out how to put horses first, it is hard. Some horses are really relationship first. And it's hard as a human to put yourself in the space of where, okay, I'm going to take 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, however long it takes with this horse to make. And some horses are really easy. I've had horses that were like at the age of 4, they're like, whatever, ride me. They were just so chill. And then other horses where it's, you know, I had a horse that took me just about 3 years to get to the point of where I could reliably catch him in the field. And my only goal was I may have to like put a leg wrap on this horse one day, and I need to be able to safely bend down and leg wrap him because he was so afraid of people that doing that kind of stuff, he was really defensive. He was very serious about it. And it took me that long to figure out what I needed to do so that he was comfortable with me catching him in the field. Like, just like really basic. This is a horse who used to be a show horse. He was imported. He had been like a children's show horse in the country where he came from. And I don't know if being in the United States, the allergies drove him nuts, but he changed a lot after he got here. But that is really hard as an owner, as a trainer, as a human, when we get horses that sometimes their timeline, it's going to be incredibly long. And that's really, it's difficult to deal with. And that situation, current guy took, when I got him to my current barn here, I spent a couple months, the indoor ring is very close to the barn. It was too far as he was concerned for the other horses. And he was barn sour. He didn't want to go down there and be by himself. So I spent a few months, you know, walking the horse back and forth between the indoor and the barn. And that's not easy to do, to say, I'm going to take this much time. My horse, yes, really gets concerned when I take him away from his friends. He's a very he likes horses guy. And that's hard as a person to put yourself in the space. If I have to take 3 months walking him back and forth, I'm going to do it. That's very hard.
No, and when I got in Juno, I had like a trainer that when I told her, you know, I bought this Mustang, she laughed in my face. And like every day was, "Oh, is your horse halter broke yet?" "Didn't think so." And like, it was an ongoing joke. And so I'm already kind of wigging out because this person's making fun of me. And then I have my own parents saying, "Why are we paying this much money a month to keep this horse you can't even like interact with?" And then when like she did finally take a halter and she was halter broke-ish and like doing things, my brain was still in that place of, we're finally getting somewhere. We need to do more. We need to keep going. And everyone around me was like, yes, you need to keep making these leaps and bounds to make this horse useful. And after like I finally tried saddling, and it just went so terribly because realistically she was not ready for it, and I wasn't educated enough to see that. When I finally had that eye-opening moment of, oh my God, you just need to stop, I was like, she has not yet in this point had a purpose, and it has not affected our relationship. It hasn't affected the fact that I really love her and care about her and that I take care of her. And even like to this point where she's still not yet saddle broke, I like, she goes every day. I oil her hooves every day. If she does any amount of work, she gets a hose down. She'll get liniment oil. She would, if she wouldn't freak out about it, she would get poultice. And like, I take care of that horse like she is some 5-star athlete. And everyone's like, that makes no sense. She is a little tiny Mustang pasture pony. And I'm like, and at the end of the day, when you decide to own a horse, it is no different than when you decide to get a dog. And everyone would agree that when you get a dog, it's your responsibility to give them the best life ever. And like, most people don't expect their dogs to go out to shows and do all these great things. You take them for walks and you love them and you treat them like a king or a queen. It's the same thing I do with my horse. Every day we would go on a walk, and I would joke with people. I'm like, she's off leash trained better than my own dog, because I would take her on trails and I'd unclip her and she just follows along and does her thing. And that's what we did every day. And people was like, you're okay with that? And I'm like, yeah, I'm totally fine with it. She's happy. I'm happy. If we never get to riding, I guess that sucks. But at this point, I haven't ridden in a year. So like, I don't really know what I'm missing anymore.
It's definitely tough when the not being able to ride thing sucks. I know personally, I am very unathletic. I work with Mary Lawnless a lot, and her rider mechanics really were extremely useful to me. And it's nice to learn stuff about horses. But yeah, I mean, I still have a desperate desire to ride. And I know that if I don't ride for a certain length of time, my body really goes, and it's not easy to get those skills back.
But it's always very interesting, because where I've learned from my own horse what you should and shouldn't do, like I basically learned how to make mistakes in the hardest way possible through Juno, which I thank her for. And I also hate for her that she had to have bad experiences to teach me and make me a better trainer. But there will be little things like when you're trying to catch that horse that doesn't want to be caught, they'll be like, grab the fly mask, grab anything you can, just grab him. And I'm like, no. We're going to take like 5 more seconds. And then there doesn't need to be any grabbing. Because in my head, any horse will react like my own, even though they typically don't. So in my head, if I walk up to my horse and she doesn't want to be caught, if I grab her fly mask, she's rearing up in the air and doesn't want to talk to you for 3 business days. And that's that.
By luck, when I was younger, I just happened to have several circumstances where I was working with horses a lot alone. So I got to make mistakes without people judging me, which I didn't realize at the time that was going on. But I learned that I could figure stuff out, make mistakes, learn to do it better, and move on. And like, that was just fine. And that was just random luck that I landed in a few of those situations, but it was incredibly useful. And that is one of the biggest tricky parts that I find in dealing with people and trying to teach people, and is how hard it is both to deal with the judgment of others, but also humans are very social. And a lot of people come to the barn because they, as much as they like horses, like they put the horse on the cross ties and they disconnect from it. They don't want the constant mental effort of trying to, is the horse happy? Why did he just take a step forward? Why does he want to leave the grooming stall? Like they want to kind of have an on-off switch and be able to shut the horse off and forget about it. And it's tricky to try to convince people to be as tuned in, just that simple thing that you explained, to persuade people to be that connected to their horse, where that's even an option. That's, for me, I've always been able to get farther by getting the horse to cooperate. There's not enough of me to force them. I can't force them to do So I have to get them cooperating with me, or at least objecting less or something.
Other thing I found interesting is like looking at people that train their horse like fully in R plus, or in even just a different mindset than like a lot of traditional horse training at this point. There's like 2 people that'll see my relationship with my horse. There will be the people that are like, oh my God, that's crazy that this previously wild horse just walks with you at liberty and doesn't wander off and doesn't spook in the middle of the woods, and when you say trot, she trots, and like all that stuff. And Then there's the other people that are like, your relationship with your horse is not good. And I'm like, how is that not good? And they're like, she's too close to you. She's too comfortable around you. She's not respecting your space. She's not doing this and that. And I'm like, one, she doesn't have to, like, respect is not in her vocabulary. And like, two, I never have a time for the most part where I'm not inviting her into my space. I want to be around her. I spent a year wanting to like hug on her and love on her and stuff. If she wants to hug and love on me back, I'll take it every single day. And so as long as she is not like standing on my foot with hers, I don't care how close she is to me. And without ever having to lay a hand on her or smack her with a rope or any of that other stuff that's so normalized, she still knows when she takes it a little bit too far. They're so much more aware than people give them credit for. And like, if you just let your relationship naturally happen, I feel like you get so much farther. I mean,
so I've had you here for an hour and a half. I don't want to keep you here longer. Is there anything else that you wanted to say about mustangs or putting the horse first?
I feel like the one thing I always have to say is I think I come off very critically. I never say any of it out of a place of like, I hate you, you're a bad trainer and you're a bad person. I don't think there are intentionally bad people when you work with horses. I don't think any of us ever got into horses with the intention of, I want to abuse an animal, things like that. Like, we all started because we were little girls playing with like My Little Ponies and stuff like that. And if I ever say anything critical of someone's training, it only comes from either a place of not understanding why you would make that decision and not being able to personally comprehend the thought process there, or just wanting to be like, sometimes everyone will do things and they don't realize that they did them. And then when your friend says, hey, did you realize you just screamed at that 5-year-old and made them cry? You realize like, oh my God, did I do that? That's so mean of me. I didn't mean to do that. I just had a bad day at work or whatever. So sometimes I feel like we need to all help each other take accountability. And I think in the horse world, so many people are afraid to help others take accountability because I don't think there's a single person in the horse world that knows how to take criticism well, especially trainers. I think every trainer feels like if you don't love their training, it's a personal attack. It's not. It's usually not. Learn from the things instead of seeing everything as a personal attack. I have a little tripod that has bendy arms, and so I'll just throw it on the corral panel somewhere, and sometimes I catch like the funniest moments and the silliest things because I tend to say some like strange and hilarious things when I train, because I just do like my own little world. And like, I have videos of when I would train dogs where a nice song would come on, I'd pick them up and just like slow dance with them.
So I'll let you go. So thank you very much for chatting with me. I really appreciate it. I'm going to try to get to, apparently you get to 10 podcast episodes and most people drop out before then. So if I can get to 10, and I find it very motivational and very fun to talk to folks. Thank you very much. All right. Have a good day then.
Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening today. If you have any feedback or have any questions, or if you want to be a guest on my podcast, feel free to reach out, putting the horse first. That's a number 1, ST, at gmail.com. Thanks again for listening.